Once a year, Ryan has permission to take off his wedding ring and steps into a world without vows. This time, however, what happens in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas. In the glimmer of Las Vegas's neon lights, a seemingly innocent agreement triggered a cascade of events that not only tested the bounds of trust, but also unraveled a hidden web of betrayal and secrets, shaking the core of Ryan's 13-year marriage. In the quiet suburb of Cedar Grove, Ryan and Melissa, both in their late 40s, lived what many would consider a charmed life. Married for 13 years and together for 15, they shared a comfortable home, mutual friends, and careers that kept them more than financially stable. Yet, beneath the veneer of suburban bliss, lay an unusual agreement that promised freedom, but risked everything they had built together. It was during their 10th anniversary dinner, in a cozy, dimly lit restaurant, that Ryan, with a nervous chuckle, had first brought up the idea. "What if," he began, tentatively holding Melissa's hand across the table, "just once a year, I could take off my wedding ring and be free, no questions asked?" The clink of cutlery seemed to pause in the air as Melissa's eyes widened in shock. The tears that followed were not of anger, but of hurt, a silent question of her not being enough. Ryan hurried to explain, not wanting to be the kind of man who harbored secrets or slid into infidelity unnoticed. "We've only ever been with each other," he said, his voice a mixture of earnest and pleading. "I don't want secrets between us. Maybe this could be something we both could do." Melissa, brushing a tear from her cheek, shook her head slowly. "I don't need anyone else to make me happy," she whispered. But after a few days of heavy silence and longer nights, she came around to the idea, thanking him for his honesty and reluctantly agreeing to his request, with one stern condition. It would only be once a year, and full honesty was required afterwards. The following year, Ryan took advantage of his newfound freedom with a mixture of guilt and exhilaration. He ventured out to a local bar, where he met a red-haired woman whose laughter was as intoxicating as the drinks she enjoyed. They shared a night of whispered secrets and fleeting warmth, and by morning, Ryan slipped his ring back on, a symbol of his return to the vows he'd momentarily set aside. At home, Melissa's only question was if he'd had a good night. His simple yes seemed to suffice, and life resumed its usual rhythm. The next year's indulgence took him far from home, to the neon-lit streets of Las Vegas during a boisterous weekend getaway with his college friends. Unbeknownst to Matthew, Jason, and David, Ryan had this peculiar hall pass which he had no intention of revealing. The trip escalated quickly from pool parties to late nights, surrounded by the dazzle and allure of the city that never sleeps. On one of those nights, Ryan found himself under the electric sky of a Vegas pool party, flirting with a woman named Rosie, who was as bold as she was beautiful. Their playful banter and shared drinks soon led to a secluded corner of the balcony, where the city's lights flickered like distant stars. Just as he leaned in for a kiss, a shadow fell over them, and Ryan turned to find David staring at him with a mix of confusion and disapproval. "Man, what are you doing?" David hissed as he pulled Ryan aside. "You've got a wife at home, and here you are, acting like you're single. What's going on?" Ryan, flushed from the alcohol and the thrill of the night, explained the agreement. David's shock was palpable, his brow furrowed in concern. "And Melissa? Does she do this too?" "No," Ryan admitted. "She doesn't want to. But she agreed I could." David shook his head, clearly unsettled by the revelation. "I don't know, man. This doesn't sit right with me." Ryan brushed off his concerns and returned to Rosie, their night spiraling into a haze of forgettable faces and stolen kisses. However, David's unease lingered, a silent sentinel in the chaotic revelry of the night. While Ryan reveled in the bright lights of Las Vegas, back in Cedar Grove, Melissa's phone lit up with a message from David. It began innocently enough, a check-in under the guise of friendliness, but quickly turned into daily exchanges, offering Melissa a window into the emotional support she felt was waning with Ryan. David's messages, filled with concern and subtle flattery, became her solace. Unbeknownst to Ryan, David had also taken the liberty of documenting his escapades, capturing photos of him with various women at the Vegas parties and sending them directly to Melissa. This breach of trust served as a silent but powerful weapon, fueling Melissa's resolve. As Ryan's indulgences escalated in Miami the following year, so did Melissa and David's digital intimacy. Their messages now delved into personal dissatisfaction and hidden desires, setting the stage for what was to come. Meanwhile, in Miami, Ryan's friends, unbeknownst to him, posted pictures of their raucous activities in a group chat, which included Ryan in compromising situations. David, still a member of the chat despite his conflicted feelings, forwarded these images to Melissa, cementing her decision to end their marriage. On the last day of Ryan's escapade in Miami, while he indulged in his last hurrah, back in Cedar Grove, Melissa and David shared a morning filled with clandestine passion. Right after, Melissa, with a resolute calm, contacted a divorce lawyer. Armed with ample evidence of Ryan's infidelities, both from David's direct submissions and the group chat leaks, she outlined her case, meticulously planning each step. Her next move was to change the locks on the house, a symbolic and literal shutting out of Ryan from her life. She had even packed up 2 suitcases of Ryan's belongings, a clear sign of her intentions to sever all ties. Melissa thought she had time. Ryan wasn't due back until the next day. However, fate, or a misreading of the flight itinerary, had other plans. Ryan returned a full day early, arriving in a taxi feeling euphoric and liberated. His week in Miami had been everything he hoped for, a perfect escape filled with fleeting romances, and he was ready to return to a quiet life with Melissa until the next year rolled around. Getting out of the taxi, he noticed a familiar car that looked eerily like David's. A sinking feeling took hold as he approached the front door. The house pulsed with the low throb of music, and more disturbingly, the rhythmic creak of what sounded unmistakably like a headboard against a wall. Heart pounding, Ryan's key turned in the lock, and he stepped inside to a scene that would haunt him forever. He climbed the stairs, each step heavy with dread, the sounds of laughter and moans drawing him inexorably to the bedroom. The door was ajar, revealing Melissa beneath a man whose face was obscured. Blind with rage and shock, Ryan bellowed, "Get off my wife!" The man paused, then turned, a face that was all too familiar. David. His best friend's eyes met his in a look of guilt and fear before he scrambled off the bed, trousers in hand, and dashed from the room. Ryan, overwhelmed by betrayal, chased David down the stairs. He caught a glimpse of him slipping into his car and locking it just as Ryan reached the door, pounding on it futilely as David drove off. Turning back to confront Melissa, Ryan found the front door now shut and locked. As he reached for the handle, his hand closed on empty air. His keys, his wallet, all his possessions were still inside. Panic gripped him as he pounded on the door, calling for Melissa, but there was no answer. Desperate, he circled to the rear of the property to check the back door. There, he caught sight of Melissa placing a second suitcase, his suitcase, outside the door. She was discarding his belongings piece by piece. "Melissa!" he shouted as he charged towards her. But she simply looked at him, a cold finality in her eyes. "I want a divorce," she stated flatly, slamming the door just as Ryan reached it. The sound of the lock clicking into place was like a gavel falling, finalizing the end of their marriage. Ryan's desperation escalated. He began banging on the door harder and harder, shouting her name over and over. The neighbors' blinds started to twitch, curious or concerned faces peeking out. Ryan was on his knees, pleading for her to come out and talk, when the police arrived, summoned by a neighbor alarmed by the disturbance. "I need to speak to her, please," Ryan pleaded with the officers as one approached him, while another went to speak with Melissa. She answered the door instantly, composed and speaking quietly to the officer. From across the yard, Ryan called to her, "Melissa, we need to talk." She ignored him, turning back inside as the door closed again. The officer walked back to Ryan, his expression unreadable. "Sir, your wife is very upset. She stated that you've been caught cheating, and she doesn't want you back in the house tonight," he explained. Ryan's frustration boiled over. "But she's the one cheating on me, with my best friend," he exclaimed. The officer shook his head slightly. "There's no evidence of that, sir. It sounds like you're trying to deflect from your own actions. I suggest you find somewhere else to sleep tonight." Feeling like the world was against him, Ryan contemplated sleeping in his car, the weight of his isolation and disbelief anchoring him in place. Eventually, he drove to his brother's house, hoping for some refuge. The reception at his brother's was frosty. As Ryan tried to explain the situation, his brother looked visibly confused, and his sister-in-law couldn't even look at him. "Ryan, are you sure there isn't a misunderstanding here? This doesn't sound like you," his brother remarked, unable to reconcile the Ryan he knew with the accusations laid against him. Ryan's recount of the story only deepened the skepticism. "It was an agreement. Melissa knew about it from the start," he insisted, but his words seemed to fall on skeptical ears. His brother, a happily married man, struggled to grasp the complexities of what Ryan was going through. Support felt miles away, leaving Ryan engulfed in a night full of turmoil. Reeling from the shock and betrayal, Ryan tried reaching out to David, hoping to confront him and perhaps find some sliver of understanding or remorse. He texted, "David, what the hell? Why are you with my wife? How could you do this to me?" But the only response was a dismissive, "You're out of line, man. You've been playing with fire for years, and now you're just paranoid because you got burned." As days passed, Ryan's attempts to explain his side were met with denials and disbelief. "There's nothing between us but friendship," Melissa told the court, a sentiment echoed by David, who added, "He's fabricating stories to cover his own guilt." His brother's house grew colder by the day, the judgment palpable as both his brother and sister-in-law avoided him, further isolating Ryan in his plight. The court sided with Melissa, granting her the house and a significant portion of their assets. Stripped of his dignity but clinging to one last piece of their shared past, Ryan faced a decision about the small apartment they had bought together early in their marriage. Filled with memories of happier times and currently rented out, he would need to wait for the lease to expire. Then, he could either move in and pay half the rent to Melissa, maintaining some semblance of independence, or sell it and split the proceeds with her. The decision was a bitter reminder of everything he had lost. 6 months had passed since the divorce was finalized when Ryan saw them again, Melissa and David, together at the supermarket. David's hand rested protectively over Melissa's noticeably pregnant belly, a stark symbol of their new life together without him. The sight cut through Ryan, tears of hurt giving way to a dark resolve. As they walked away, laughing and oblivious to his presence, Ryan felt the last ties of his old life disintegrate. What was once his family now belonged to another, and the burning need for revenge settled deep within him, a dangerous spark waiting to ignite. Thanks for stopping by. Whether this story captured your heart or left you with questions, I'd love to hear from you. Please like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts below. If you comment, "I subscribed," I will personally reply to your comment to show my appreciation. Your insights inspire our journey together, and I'm excited to connect with each of you.